Hello everyone, welcome to Thursday Grace. I've been asked to speak about the how in worship. I was looking at 2 Samuel 6 and in 1 Chronicles 15 about the Ark of the Covenant being finally brought back to Jerusalem. It was a great day of rejoicing. There was the sounding of trumpets, gongs, cymbals and dancing. And we're told King David acted in an undignified way for a royal head of Israel and Judah. Forgetting his royal state, he put aside his crown and his costly robes, and he girded himself with a linen ephod, a simple garment. Then he enthusiastically leaps and dances before the Lord with all the abandonment of a child. King David, we're told, danced before the Lord with all his might. Strange spectacle. Now the king's wife, Michal, a haughty, snobby daughter of Saul, kept her distance. She was looking through a window and thought this was pitifully undignified. King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. It is said Michal despised him in her heart. It was just not proper. She later spoke very sarcastically to him, ashamed of his royal lack of dignity. To which King David said to her, "You ain't seen nothing yet. God has done so much for me. When worshipping, I can be even more undignified than this." Now, I think from God's perspective, I can believe that this was very dear to him, justifying the description we have of David, a man after God's own heart. A great king, forgetting himself and his own importance, dressing down, making himself as one of the humblest of his followers, as a child, delighting in that moment in God. Now, being proper can be a common concern, and it's often in discussion when talking about public, corporate, religious gatherings. And the word worship is often used as a blanket phrase to cover the words like singing and church gatherings and literally songs of praise. Whilst worship can be a corporate group together, in fact, it's really about our individual and our personal attitude of mind. It's about our unrestrained expression to God, whether we're with others or not. And when King David was dancing before God, he was not focused on all the people around him, watching or joining in with him. Now, whilst praise comes from our head and is an act of will, worship comes from the heart. It's a joyous emotional response, an overflow of self. And what's more, everything about our day and throughout our day can be about this worship. Our whole day can be a personal dance to God, whatever that might mean to you. Now, there's no proper in that. This is more about being real, on our own, in our expression of ourselves before God. Now, 30 years ago, I moved to Narberth. Jack and I, on one of our first Sundays, wanted to look for a church to attend. Jack said she was going to some random group that met in some worn-out old Victorian building in Narberth. Now, I said I was going to a proper church, so we went our separate ways. Jack went to the random group, and I found my proper church. I got as far as the entrance and sort of looked to see what was there. All I could glean about the church was the flower rota. Now, I decided it wasn't for me. Now, the following week, Jack stayed at home. I went to the random group. I think Jack wanted me to go and have a look, see if I liked them, because she did. I went, I stayed, and I came home. And I told Jack, they're all mad, bonkers, or something like that. Now, this random group was barely a dozen folk, was the precursor to Grace Church as we know it today. They met on the first floor of this tired old Victorian community building. Big room, it had bowed and creaky floorboards, and worship was something else. Having only ever been to a proper church until then, I hadn't seen anything like it. There were a few folk there jigging and jogging about, waving their arms around. And there's one tall, lanky guy there called Steve, bouncing up and down on the spot as high as he could. The floor was like a trampoline, and everything in the room rocked about. I think there was a piano and a table, and they had some crockery on it, and the crockery used to rattle as they were worshipping. Below us in this aged-old building, other respectable citizens of Narberth were probably attempting some pottery class or breathing exercises. They must have thought the roof or the ceiling was going to come tumbling down on them as this gaggle of wacky holy joes fell upon them. But there was no flower rota, and there was something compelling about the group. So I stayed on. There was nowhere else to go. Not a lot changed. I've learned this about worshipping with others. We can be a restrained Michael looking out of the window, or we can be a partying David in the street. We can act proper. We can look out the window. We could get steamed up and scornful and put out about other people's undignified behaviour. And sometimes I probably do. Or we can stop looking and, like David, not concern oneself with other people, but rather focus on God, being ourselves with God. Now, in practice, how do you do that? Well, I can tell you, it's easy. Don't stand at the window, pull the curtains. That is, eyelids down, close your eyes, and everyone disappears. They're not even there in the room with you. I can't see you. They're not there. That's a great way to worship. Switch off everything else, pull down the blinds, and concentrate on God. If you close your eyes, there's no one there. Just me and God. Let's not be worried about other people's behaviour. Let's concentrate on God. Let me finish with a simple statement on the how of worship. The Samaritan woman at the well who met Jesus wanted to talk how to properly worship. And Jesus simply said this: God wants worshippers in spirit and in truth. Let us worship in spirit and truth. Thank you.